If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. Today we are looking at the case of Tara Lee Calico. Tara Calico, made famous by the photograph, a Polaroid photograph discovered that supposedly shows her and another boy bound and gagged. I mean, this is the stuff of nightmares, the stuff of horror films, and it's quite unbelievable in many respects. The case is still officially unsolved, although there have been some developments in the past decade that, there was about 2 decades with nothing. So this occurred September 20th. She disappeared September 20th, 1988, and then there really nothing until 2008 other than the Polaroid. So we'll be examining this case. There's a lot of oddities here. Some people believe, for all intents and purposes, it is solved with the guilty parties named. And we'll be getting to those theories as well, but one step at a time. We'll be going over one of the most infamous cases in true crime. Any true crime follower has at least heard about this case in passing. I mean, it is probably considered one of the top 10 true crime cases, and we will be dissecting it in typical MINDSHOCK fashion with logic and reason at the forefront, careful not to commit any logical fallacies or biases in examining this case, just like we do with all the other cases. If you enjoy the podcast and want to support it, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure your device allows those notifications to come through. If that's still not working, you can just go to youtube.com/MINDSHOCK to manually check for the latest updates or peruse our ever-growing back catalog. Like this podcast, shared across social media platforms, cold cases and missing persons cases often only get solved if awareness is kept up. These victims may be gone, but they are not forgotten. So spread awareness far and wide. A lot of social media platforms you can share on. You can also find MINDSHOCK on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. So the Tara Calico case this has been a pretty well-requested case, so we're finally getting to it. And this will be thorough, as always. So the first thing that stands out is this Tara went on a daily 34-mile bike ride. Now, I don't know how many individuals ride that kind of mileage daily, but that is not the majority of the population. So already here we have an outlier factor. Again, that's not the most unusual thing in the world. I'm just saying most people do not bike this kind of distance every morning. So she went 17 miles out, then 17 miles back. And let's do the quick breakdown here. So she was 19 years old on September 20th, 1988, when she disappeared from Belen, New Mexico. She's been missing for 32 years, 4 months, and 23 days. And when you say it like that, I mean, it really hits. Tara Lee Calico, born February 28, 1969, is an American woman who disappeared near her home in Belen, New Mexico, September 20th, 1988. She is widely believed to have been kidnapped. In July 1989, a Polaroid photo of an unidentified young woman and boy, gagged and seemingly bound, was televised to the public after it was found in a convenience store parking lot in Port St. Joe, Florida. Not that close to New Mexico. Family friends thought the woman resembled Calico and contacted her mother, who then met with investigators and examined the Polaroid. She believed it was her daughter. After taking, quote, time, growth, and lack of makeup, end quote, into consideration, and noted that a scar on the woman's leg was identical to one that Calico had. Scotland Yard analyzed the photo and concluded that the woman was Calico, but a second analysis by the Los Alamos National Laboratory, is this where Bob Lazar worked? Disagreed. An FBI analysis of the photo was inconclusive. So here's the thing. We'll be getting into the photo analysis because I know a lot of people want the MINDSHOCK take on the photo, especially when there other information from investigators, law enforcement surfaced that apparently this Polaroid was the photo of some kind of a prank, of some kind of family or friends prank where they just tied people up and took a photo as a prank. Now, and then a lot of coincidence theorists simply said, oh, well, guess that's that. Never need to look at that again. That settles that. Without actually looking at who the individuals were and how they determined that was a prank. But moreover, anyone looking at the photo, there's definitely a haunting element in the eyes of these individuals. They do not look happy. So the only way that this could possibly be a prank is if it was some kind of prank, a coerced prank against the will of the participants, but it looks even more sinister than that. Again, just going off of vibe. It's so tough to just write this off as a prank. But we'll be getting into extreme detail with the whole backstory with that supposedly being a prank. Also, we have a lot of people believe that often parents want to believe there's some kind of a clue or lead to find their child, particularly if they're alive. So in this photo, they're alive. So it's kind of like holding on to false hope, etc. But I will pose this, because on MINDSHOCK, we're all about being logical, taking into account statistics. Statistically, what are the chances that within a year of going missing, less than a year, a photo surfaces of someone believed to be kidnapped in a photo tied and bound with a scar that is very similar to an individual that was kidnapped? Now, I don't know if we have, we'll be doing photo comparisons, but I don't know. Basically, they're stating that the scar was absolutely identical, not somehow blurred, similar, not in exactly the same spot. So how many two young women have the exact same scar on their leg, statistically, and how many, in how many cases was one of them apparently a missing persons? Now, here's the thing. If this other individual is never identified, how do we know that it's not her? And if it isn't her, what are the chances a young woman goes missing? Within a year, there's an unexplained photograph of another young woman either also kidnapped or involved in a prank that happens to be approximately the same age, same facial features, and the same scar. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, of course, but I'm just saying that's a heck of a coincidence. That is a heck of a coincidence if it's not her. Again, factoring in the time frame. If we add a couple years, let's say the photo was found another couple years later, age harder to determine, that's a little different. So yeah, it's rough. It's really, really rough. And we'll be getting into the young boy in the photo as well. And there's been some identification issues there. That seems to be a little bit more difficult to connect, particularly what kind of an area are they photographing? And then also, yeah, we'll be getting into that. So Calico's case received extensive coverage on television programs such as A Current Affair, Unsolved Mysteries, and America's Most Wanted. It was also profiled on the Oprah Winfrey Show and 48 Hours. As of 2021, no arrests have been made and the case remains open. So the disappearance on Tuesday, September 20th, 1988, Calico left her home at about 9:30 a.m. to go on her daily bike ride along New Mexico State Road 47. She rode that route almost every morning and was sometimes accompanied by her mother, Patty Dole. However, Dole stopped riding with Calico after she felt that she had been stalked by a motorist. So, okay, now we're really entering outlier territory here. And coincidence, I mean, the coincidence theorists probably will love this case as well. Okay, how many people ride this kind of an extensive bike route every morning? A certain percentage. That's not the strangest thing in the world. How many people ride it with their mother? Much smaller percentage. How many people have had their mother stop riding the route with them because they were stalked by a motorist? Okay, now we're in some minute numbers here. So this is it's really tough, but she continued letting her ride alone. This is tough for me to understand, but again, let's continue with the wiki here. She advised Tara to think about carrying mace, but Tara rejected the idea. And of course, if she was hit by a vehicle, obviously the mace might not have helped. But regardless, on the morning of Calico's disappearance, she had told Dole to come and get her if she was not home by noon, as she had plans to play tennis with her boyfriend at 12:30. When her daughter did not return, Dole went searching for her along Tara's usual bike route, but could not find her. She then contacted police. The other thing that's a little bit strange here, she told Dole to come and get her if she was not home by noon. So does that mean she thought she might get tired? And that Tara thought she might get tired and just sit down and take a break somewhere along the route? And then, I don't know. That's kind of weird. And if she does this route almost every day, I mean, it's not like she's adding extra miles and she's out of shape. I don't know. That's a little strange, that detail as well. And again, she's playing tennis with her boyfriend at 12:30. So that's, again, she can't be that out of shape if she's doing this kind of bike ride and then she's going to go play tennis right after. So what prompted her to tell her mother to come and get her if she was not home by noon? Was she planning to meet up with people and didn't want to rush and talk to them? She just wanted to hang out somewhere? Come and get her. When her daughter did not return, Dole went searching for her along Tara's usual bike route, but could not find her. She then contacted police. Pieces of Calico's Sony Walkman and a cassette tape were later discovered along the road. Dole believed that she might have dropped them in an attempt to mark her trail. Several people saw Calico riding her bicycle, which has never been found. And we'll actually get into those details of the bike as well. No one witnessed her presumed abduction, although several witnesses observed a light-colored pickup truck, possibly a 1953 Ford, with a camper shell following closely behind her. And does that photograph look like it's taken inside some kind of camper shell? Okay, so the photographs here. On June 15th, 1989, a Polaroid photo of an unidentified young woman and a boy, both gagged with black duct tape and seemingly bound. And they're saying seemingly because if you look at the photo, if their arms are not bound, it looks like they're pretending they're bound, because why would somebody randomly lay down on their arms like that, or lay down sideways with your arms, both arms behind you? That's probably not the most comfortable position. I don't know why they're using the word seemingly, unless they're going with the story that this is some kind of a prank and they were faking it. But if you're going to fake it to the extent that you put duct tape on your face, why would you not tie the wrists if you're just faking? I don't know. It's really bizarre, but it's a very unsettling photograph, and I can't even look at it for that long, because the look in this young woman's eyes is just not good. It's very, very disturbing. The woman who found the photo said that it was in a parking space where a white, windowless Toyota cargo van had been parked when she arrived at the store. She said that the van was being driven by a man with a mustache who appeared to be in his 30s. Police set up roadblocks to intercept the vehicle, but the man has never been identified. Now, you have to applaud that gumption, because how often do police set up roadblocks off a dropped Polaroid where it's, it does look like these are kidnapped, bound individuals, but I don't know if that happened today. Would they set up roadblocks for that, or would they just put up like a short little news alert? I don't know. According to Polaroid officials, the picture had to have been taken after May 1989 because the particular film used in the photograph was not available until then. So that would mean that it was, so again, is that a little strange? So between May and June, so this film was only being sold for approximately a month. So that's interesting, because that means whoever took the photo would recently have had to have purchased the film and not using some kind of older stock that was just lying around. They specifically would have purchased new film for possibly the purpose of taking this photo. For what, though? It's really bizarre, because what's the point? Did they drop the photo accidentally? Are these photos part of their own private sick collection and they accidentally dropped it? Or did they want to leak it for whatever reason, just to screw around and cause some trouble? Cause public panic, whatever these criminals do, that they like to feed off of this panic and fear. The photo was broadcast on A Current Affair in July, and Dole was contacted by friends who had seen the show and thought the woman resembled Calico. Relatives of Michael Henley, also of New Mexico. So again, let's add this to the probability stack. So if this other boy had gone missing farther than New Mexico, but this is the same state, you have two people abducted in the same year. He disappeared the same year. We don't know. I guess theoretically you could say they weren't definitively known to have been abducted. So he disappeared April 88. She disappeared September 88. They disappeared within a few months of each other, and both of them, people who, if it's not them, people who look like them, a boy and a girl who look like them, surfaces. Statistically, what are the chances here? Even the coincidence theorists have to say it's a possibility. It's a possibility it's them. Now, the issue, of course, is with Henley's remains that were found, but we'll be getting to that. So relatives of Michael Henley, also of New Mexico, who had disappeared in April 1988, saw the episode and said that they believed he was the boy in the photo. Dole and Henley's parents both met with investigators and examined the Polaroid. Dole said she was convinced it was Calico. She also noted that the scar on the woman's leg was identical to one that Calico had received in a car accident. And again, with the resolution of these photos, it's actually difficult to see the scar clearly. In addition, a paperback copy of V.C. Andrews' My Sweet Audrina, said to be one of Calico's favorite books, can be seen lying next to the woman. Scotland Yard analyzed the photo and concluded that the woman was Calico, but a secondary analysis by the Los Alamos National Laboratory disagreed. An FBI analysis of the photo was inconclusive. So Scotland Yard says yes, FBI says maybe, Los Alamos, possibly involved in some alien UFO activity, says no. Okay. So, again, statistically, so we have her favorite book. Now, that book was relatively popular. However, it's not everybody's favorite book. So again, when we're doing this coincidence stack, statistically, we have a young woman happened to be abducted, a young boy happened to be abducted from the same state within months of each other in 88. A Polaroid surface of them looking like they're bound and gagged, like pretty conclusively bound and gagged. I don't know how, I guess theoretically you could say it was a prank, but If it was, they do not look like they're acting. At least the female does not. The boy, it's a little harder to tell, but again, at that younger age, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. Either way, her favorite book is right next to her. Now, would she have said it was her favorite book? Because why would she have had her favorite book with her? Which is strange, unless she did. But that would be unusual. What else did she carry with her? We'll be getting into that. But in conversation, so this is almost a year later. Again, did they simply ask if it was her favorite book? Did she overhear her talking to Michael Henley or the boy if it's not him, if it was her? Again, the coincidence stack is quite high. Again, I would say it's if we take each individual factor by itself, like if there was that book just happened to be in a van. That's not unusual. 1989. It's a relatively popular book. But when you add all of these other variables, missing female from New Mexico, missing boy from New Mexico, their parents say it looks exactly like them. Okay, well, and the scar on her leg. It's not just that, it's the scar. So it's tough. It's really, really tough. So yeah, to write it all off it's bizarre. It's bizarre. But again, if you were writing a movie, if you were making a movie and you just say, oh, by the way, somebody dropped a Polaroid, it would, I don't know, it would seem a little unlikely. It's bizarre. Henley's mother said that she was almost certain it was Michael in the Polaroid. Okay, so there's a difference here. Henley's mother says almost certain. Tara's mother is convinced. So Tara's mother is certain. Henley's not 100%, but relatively certain. So that's an interesting point as well. The identification of the boy in the photograph as Henley is considered highly unlikely. His remains were discovered in June 1990 in the Zuni Mountains, about 7 miles from his family's campsite from which he had disappeared and 75 miles from where Calico disappeared. Police believe that Henley wandered off and subsequently died of exposure. So, okay, obviously it's possible the boy is not Michael Henley and the girl is Tara Calico. That's a possibility as well. But to exclude him, again, the boy in the picture, roughly the same age. Similar in appearance. Now, his head is smaller and he's farther from the camera. So it's going to be obviously a little bit harder to identify him because the duct tape is taking up more of his face. But it's still tough. But is it beyond the realm of possibility that he was dumped, his remains were dumped there however long after? So I wouldn't consider it out of the realm of possibility that that's Michael Henley. However, it's more likely that the female is Tara Calico than the male is Michael Henley, particularly when his mother was not 100% convinced. She said almost certain, and you have to appreciate her honesty because as I mentioned before, a lot of parents or family members, they just want that false hope so much. They say, yeah, it's definitely them, investigate more. She didn't do that. She made that caveat, almost certain. She was not 100% certain. Okay, other photos. In 2009, 20 years after the Polaroid photo was found and shared by the media, pictures of a boy were sent to the Port St. Joe police chief, David Barnes. He received 2 letters, postmarked June 10th and August 10th, 2009, from Albuquerque, New Mexico. One letter contained a photo printed on copy paper of a young boy with sandy brown hair. Someone had drawn a black band in ink on the photo over the boy's mouth, as if it were covered in tape as in the 1989 picture. The second letter contained an original image of the boy. On August 12th, the Star newspaper in Port St. Joe received a third letter, also postmarked in Albuquerque on August 10th and depicting the same image of a boy with black marker drawn over his mouth. The boy has not been confirmed to be the same one as in the previous photo. None of the letters contained a return address or a note indicating the child's identity, making the officials there believe it may have something to do with the disappearance of Tara Calico. The letters were sent at the same time that a self-professed psychic had called about Calico, saying that she had met a runaway in California with whom she worked in a strip club. The girl was eventually murdered. The caller said she had dreams suggesting the runaway may have been Calico and that she may be buried in California. Searches did not lead to any discoveries. The photos were given to the FBI for further investigation in hope of finding fingerprints or possible DNA evidence. 2 other Polaroid photographs, possibly of Calico, have surfaced over the years. The first was found near a construction site in Montecito, California, and is a blurry photo of a girl's face with tape covering her mouth and light blue striped fabric behind her, similar to that on the pillow in the Toyota van photo. It was taken on film that was not available until June 1989. The second photo shows a woman loosely bound in gauze, her eyes covered with more gauze and large black framed glasses, with a male passenger behind her on an Amtrak train. The film used was not available until February 1990. Calico's mother believed the first one was Tara, but thought that the second may have been a gag. Her sister stated they had a striking, uncalming resemblance. As for me, I will not rule them out, but keep in mind our family has to identify many other photographs, and all but those 3 were ruled out. So another point to make here. There was a whole bunch of other photographs, and they all ruled them out, said it wasn't her. So another interesting point there. And another quick point, according to other sources, Tara only took her Sony Walkman, her headphones, and a cassette tape of the band Boston. So apparently she did not take any books or any other items. And regarding the comment to come pick her up, apparently that was sort of joking, as if she might get a flat tire to come pick her up. Just extra context there. And the ride usually took about 2 hours. Okay, regarding the 2 additional Polaroids, the one in the train, just, I don't know, the guy in the photograph looks like he's joking around. I can't tell. And then, of course, the woman's face is away from the camera, so it's really hard to tell. But would they be sitting on it? Would he have her hands bound like that in a public train? I mean, that's gauze, but yeah, that just looks like whatever. I mean, she could break through that easily, right? If it's gauze and on her legs. There's just the picture it just seems weird, super weird. And I guess there's really no reason to believe that would be her. The second one, actually, so here's the thing. With the pillows in the background and the stripes, it looks like the spacing on the stripes is a little bit different than in the original Polaroid to me. But even if it's not, however, the woman in the image does look a little similar to the woman in the Polaroid, possibly a bit older version. But just another remark from looking at photos of Calico, her eyebrows look like they arch slightly more than the young woman in the photograph. The nose is similar, shadows on the nose similar, facial structure similar. If you look at the spacing between the hairline and the eyebrows, very, very similar. I just noticed, I mean, again, if she's trying to smile in her photographs or doing half smiles, her eyebrow, I mean, that might affect your eyebrows slightly, but they look almost horizontal in the photo. And then there's other photos of Tara where there's more of an arch there. And in this Polaroid photo, they look almost completely horizontal. I mean, it is a low resolution. When you blow it up, there's a tiny little bit of an arch coming off of it, as most people have. But it just doesn't seem as pronounced as in other photographs. I don't know. It's tough. It's really tough. She also possibly could have lost weight, or maybe not. The unidentified boy with the marker over his mouth, I don't know. It's hard to tell if it could be him or not. That the boy is kind of a little bit more of a generic look. Tara doesn't necessarily look like every other person walking around. She's got some more unique features. the boy at his age with his haircut, he looks a little bit more nondescript. So it's pretty tough. But let's get into the later developments. In 2008, Rene Rivera, the sheriff of Valencia County, reported that he received information that 2 teenagers had accidentally hit Calico with a truck, panicked, and subsequently killed her. According to Rivera, the boys who knew Calico drove up behind her in a truck and some form of an accident followed. Calico later died, and those responsible covered up the crime. Rivera stated that he knew the names of those involved, but that without a body he could not make a case. He did not release the evidence that led him to the conclusion. Calico's stepfather, John Dole, said that the sheriff should not have made these comments if he was not willing to arrest anyone, and that strong circumstantial evidence should be enough for a conviction. Here's the thing, though. In terms of a conviction, yes, usually people don't want to pursue cases, prosecutors don't want to pursue cases that they don't feel have a good chance of going through. But but to a certain degree, just even putting the case forward, that might bring about a certain amount of investigation and awareness where even if it's not those particular guys, it might lead to a more definitive ruling them out as opposed in the maybe category. So it might still be worthy to pursue a case even without a solid chance of conviction, and who knows what might come up in the interim as well. In October 2013, a 6-person task force was established to reinvestigate Calico's disappearance. As of 2017, no arrests have been made and the case remains open. On October 1st, 2019, the FBI announced they are offering a reward up to $20,000 for precise details leading to the ID or location of Tara Lee Calico and information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for her disappearance. And that's a decent amount of money, but come on, again, all the billionaires out there. I mean, even the millionaires. There's so many millionaires out there. Millionaires can't put up, I don't know, a certain amount of money to help families of missing loved ones, to put up rewards to assist in the closure of these cases. I mean, it's mind-boggling, mind-shocking. And furthermore, the FBI is offering this reward, but what about all these hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars going to all these other countries? Now, I'm not talking about programs that feed and clothe and house children. I'm talking about weird propaganda campaigns, making fake videos, like things the U.S. government is involved in, like creating TV shows like Pakistani Sesame Street or whatever was in the budget, where there's these millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, are going into this nonsense when it could be used to help solve these cases. Again, sorry for that short aside. It's tough to think about. So regarding the Polaroids, if it's not Tara, so is this another young woman who has been abducted, who just happens to have a scar on her leg and happens to bear a relatively striking resemblance? I mean, people don't look 100% like each other, like themselves in different photographs. So to expect her to be dead on 100% when she's clearly been, if she was abducted and this Polaroid is legitimate and it's her, she'd been miserable for however period of time, possibly starved, who knows. To expect her to look 100% exactly like in all her other photographs, it's tough. It's tough. And again, looking at anybody's, all the listeners out there, look at your own photographs in different periods of your life, not even a couple months apart. You could look completely different days apart. Different clothing, different state of mind. You can look different. So it's hard to conclusively rule her out, especially with the scar. But if it's not her, so there's a Polaroid found in Florida. Then there's a Polaroid found in California, and she was abducted from New Mexico. So is this just a cross-country road-tripping kidnapper psycho? Because there's a lot of back and forth here, because the problem is we do have more information because we have the dated film here. So if this information from Polaroid is accurate, which we have no reason to believe it's not accurate, they should be able to know when they're to test the film and know when it came out. It'd be nice if another independent photography expert lab corroborated the information put forth by Polaroid, just to be 100% sure. I mean, I would think it would be done. We're not. I mean, it'd be nice to have another one or two sources, not from Polaroid, just to 100% confirm that this film was not on sale and could not have been purchased before the months that they allege here. So it's really, really bizarre that this photo is showing up months later in Florida. Then there are these two other photographs. So the first was near a construction site, Montecito, California. Could have just been some guy playing around with gauze. I mean, it's weird. It doesn't match. Whereas the second Polaroid, that's super blurry with the bound female that happens to look like she could be Tara. And so it was found near a construction site. And it's not stated where the second Polaroid was found. The phrasing in all of these articles that 2 additional Polaroid photographs have been found since her disappearance. The first photograph was found near a construction site in Montecito, California. So that means they were not found together. So it doesn't say where the other one was found on the Amtrak train, which just doesn't, it just, something seems off about that. It just seems like people wouldn't, why would they do that in public, in full view? It just doesn't make any sense. Whereas the blurry one, again, there's something seems off about it. Something just screams wrong. Whether it's Tara or not, it's just very disturbing. It's very, very disturbing. I'm going to go through a couple details here on the FBI website on Tara Lee Calico's page. And it says here, that's really weird. They put her at 5'5" to 5'7" at the time of her disappearance, so they don't know how tall she was. Weird. So she's between 5'5" and 5'7", and she's 115 to 120 pounds. Looks like she'd be closer to 5'7" then. But it also says under her scars, she has a large scar on the back of her right shoulder. And yeah. It's very unfortunate that in the other Polaroid that it didn't show that part, because if she had both scars, I mean, one scar on the leg and the exact same scar, exact same spot, exact same size, I mean, that's relatively conclusive, but if she had both, I mean, there'd be no question. Unless that's not accurate and it's the scars on her leg, I don't know. The reward here, the FBI is offering a reward of $20,000 for precise details leading to the identification or location of Tara Lee Calico and information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for disappearance. Calico was last seen riding a neon pink Huffy mountain bike with yellow control cables and sidewalls. She was wearing a white t-shirt with First National Bank of Bellin on it, and she was a bank teller. Size medium, white shorts with green stripes, white ankle socks, and white and turquoise Avia tennis shoes. Calico was also wearing a gold butterfly ring with a diamond insert, a gold amethyst ring, and half-inch gold hoop earrings. Details: Tara Lee Calico left her home on Brugg Street in Belen, New Mexico to go on a bike ride 9:30 a.m. on September 20th, 1988. She rode her mother's bicycle as her own was damaged. So I guess that explains why her mother couldn't go with her, because they only had one bike. She was last seen riding along Highway 47 in Valencia County approximately 11:45 a.m. Calico biked this route daily during her routine 36-mile ride. She was 19 years old at the time of her disappearance and was never seen again. And they do not mention the Polaroid here. Certain investigators believe that it's not her in the Polaroid. I don't know if that's 100% official, but let's go over the review here on the Unsolved Mysteries wiki. That's strange. It says occupation unrevealed, but it does list her as 5'7", 120. And here we have more information. So brown hair with a cowlick, green eyes, large scar on the back of her right shoulder, brown birthmark on the back of one leg, large scar on her calf. At 9:30 a.m., September 20th, 1988, 19-year-old Tara Calico left her home in Belen, New Mexico on her normal 34-mile bike ride. She was last seen riding her neon pink Huffy bike with yellow control cables and sidewalls on her usual route along Highway 47 when she vanished. So, depending on the source, they're saying it wasn't her bike or it was her bike. With a suspicious vehicle following her, Tara's bike has never been recovered and she has never been found. Her Sony Walkman was found by her mother, Patty, the next day. Again, we have to go through some of these sources because, again, there's always these conflicting details. Was it the day or the following day? And although there were several reported sightings of her in southern U.S. in 1988 and 1989, none of them could be confirmed, and her case remains unsolved. And as always with most missing persons cases, there are usually a couple sightings somewhere that, it may or may not be her, but in a lot of cases, let's say the cases that the person was known, eventually their body was recovered close to where they were found and it was determined that they died soon after they went missing. Obviously, the far and wide sightings could not have been this individual, simply mistaken. But of course, we have no way of knowing for the people that are still missing whether or not the sightings are legitimate or not, same as in this case. On June 15th, 1989, a Polaroid showing two bound and gagged teenagers, the boy's doesn't look like a teenager, was found in Port St. Joe, Florida. It was found near a convenience store where a white Toyota cargo van had been parked. The girl in it was believed to be Tara. The boy next to her was believed to be another New Mexico youth named Michael Henley. Factory analysis determined that the photo was recently taken. The FBI had not been able to determine if the children in the photo are Tara and Michael. However, a forensic artist compared pictures of the missing teenagers to the photo and was 85% sure that they were the ones depicted. That's kind of interesting that he was 85% sure of both, not 90 for one, 80 for another. Suspects: there are no known suspects, but witnesses report seeing a dirty white or light gray colored 1954 Ford pickup truck with a white handmade shell following her. Results unresolved. It was later proven, in quotations, that the boy in the photo was not Michael Henley. Authorities believe he was not the victim of kidnapping or foul play, but instead died from prolonged exposure to the wilderness after getting lost in the forest on a camping trip with his father and a family friend. His remains were found in 1990, just a few miles from the campsite in New Mexico where he was last seen. His disappearance is no longer considered connected to Tara's. The Calicos moved to Florida in 2003. Patty died in 2006. Tara's biological father died in 2002, but her stepfather, John Dole, is still alive and hopes that she will be found. Two other photos believed to be of her have surfaced in the years since her disappearance. However, the last one, showing a woman with bandages over her face on an Amtrak train with a man sitting next to her, is believed to be a prank. Investigators no longer believe that Tara was the girl in the photo. Instead, they have learned from witnesses that she was most likely killed on the day of her disappearance. A man named Henry Brown made a deathbed confession to police. He said that shortly after her disappearance, he had been in the basement of a man named Lawrence Romero Jr. While there, he noticed what appeared to be a young woman's body, wrapped in a blue tarp and buried in a makeshift grave. Romero, a man named Dave Silva, and another man with red hair told Henry that the body was Tara's. They said that on the day of the disappearance, they, along with a man named Leroy Chavez, these names are all right out of a movie, were in a truck when they noticed her riding her bike. They struck her with their truck and abducted her. They took her to a grave pit and raped her. When Tara threatened to go to the police, Romero stabbed her to death, while Silva, Chavez, and the third man held her down. And does that story ring true? If you were just assaulted in this fashion and violently, would you threaten to I mean, again, if you're in an emotional state and you're scared, maybe if you're thinking they're not going to let you go unless you threaten to go to the police, I don't know. Again, it's hard to put yourself in that kind of situation that is just so tragic and emotional. And this is a 19-year-old. Off the bat, it seems like it might be smarter to not threaten to go to the police. I mean, a lot of times, victims of crimes make the opposite plea. They say they won't go to the police if they let them go. So I don't know. But this is this guy's story. When Tara threatened to go to the police, Romero stabbed her to death while Silva, Chavez, and the third man held her down. They originally hid her body in a nearby bush. However, as searches began for her, they moved her body to the basement. Henry told investigators that they threatened to kill him if he went to the police. He also said that they got away with the crime because Romero's father, Lawrence Romero Sr., was the sheriff at the time. He also allegedly helped cover up the crime. He apparently found a note written by Romero Jr. confessing to Tara's murder and destroyed it. Henry also told investigators that he believed the men later placed Tara's body in a pond near one of their houses. He also said that her bike had been disposed of at a junkyard. Another man also came forward and told police that one of the suspects had confessed to him as well. Unfortunately, all were deceased by the time this information came to light. Sadly, Tara's body has never been found. Recently, a friend of Tara's, Melinda Esquivel, had created a podcast and started her own investigation into the case. She is also working on a documentary about it. In October 2019, the FBI offered a $20,000 reward in it. So there are a few missing pieces here. Of course, if multiple people corroborated the story, the other thing that I'm thinking here, if he was that scared of them that he only made this as a deathbed confession, but did he know they were already dead, or did they die after the deathbed confession? When did all this information come to light? But this Henry Brown character is stating that shortly after disappearance, he had been in the basement of a man named Lawrence Romero Jr. And so Senior was the sheriff. What was he doing in the basement with the sheriff's son? And why would they allow him into the basement if they randomly had if they just had a body there and also told him who the body belonged to? Were they involved in drug deals and that's why, and they wanted him to keep his mouth shut? But would someone expose themselves like that? But if this is the sheriff's son and he thinks he has some kind of immunity, he wouldn't care and he'd be that reckless? Possibly. If he wasn't the sheriff's son, maybe he wouldn't be, and they wouldn't be allowing random people in his basement and telling them he's got dead bodies in there. Now, he said it appeared to be a young woman's body wrapped in a blue tarp. So what does that mean? Is it possible it wasn't any kind of body? What if they lied? What if he's telling the truth and these guys were screwing around? There's always people with these bizarre, sick, twisted senses of humor after tragedies. When people go missing or are killed, they make jokes about it. So he's not claiming that he saw her face or even that he saw that this was any kind of body. It looked like a young woman's body wrapped in a blue tarp. So if it was completely wrapped, is it possible it wasn't a human body? I don't know. I'm just trying to examine all the options here. But if he was convinced that it was, and he was that terrified of these men, then perhaps he would keep the secret. Now, a lot of people doubt this story because supposedly there's really not that many ponds in that area. And after this information came to light, it would seem that they would have searched ponds and areas, and nothing has been found, of course. But we don't know that for sure, obviously. But it's an interesting story. He named names, so it's not super vague. There was only one guy that he didn't know the name of. He named all these other guys, and then we have this story that Lawrence Romero Sr. helped cover up the crime and found a note from his son confessing to the murder and destroyed this note. Interesting. So Here's a great article on this case, Medium.com, the True Crime Edition by Kim L. Pasqualini, published July 13th, 2020. It was September 20th, 1988, a beautiful sunny day in Belen, New Mexico. Tara Calico, 19, decided to go out for her daily bike ride at approximately 9:30 a.m. that morning. Normally, the beautiful teen would ride with her mother, but there had been an incident where her mother had felt they were followed by a motorist, and she no longer felt comfortable going along. Again, there's a conflicting statement here in the FBI website. The FBI is stating that her mother's bike was damaged, which is, her bike was damaged, so she took her mother's bike. And this incident is it possible this incident with the motorist was imagined by her mother? Or maybe not imagined, maybe they were just being obnoxious, like some motorists are, but it wasn't necessarily nefarious. There wasn't an actual real plan to stalk and abduct. Or what if there was? In which case, wouldn't that be connected to her disappearance? She encouraged Tara to carry mace, but Tara told her mother no. The ride typically took 2 hours. Joking, Tara asked her mother, Patty Dole, to come and get her around noon if she got a flat tire and had not returned. Tara had plans to play tennis with her boyfriend 12:30 p.m., giving her plenty of time to finish the ride. Tara took her mother's neon pink Huffy mountain bike and left their house to ride her regular route on New Mexico State Road 47. The only thing Tara took with her was her Sony Walkman, her headphones, and a cassette tape of the band Boston. When Tara did not return, Patty went out to look for her, driving Tara's usual route. When she returned home and Tara was not there, Patty called the Valencia County Sheriff's Department and made a missing person report. Later that day, officers found pieces of Tara's Walkman. So again, we have another conflicting. Her mother found the cassette tape that day, or the next day. Now we have officers found pieces of Tara's Walkman along with the cassette tape scattered along the side of the road. Tara and her bike were missing, so it was later that day. An extrovert, an avid reader, and physically active, Tara worked as a bank teller and was studying to become either a psychologist or psychiatrist. She was highly motivated and would never leave without telling her mother. Witnesses came forward and said they saw an older model white or light-colored pickup truck with a camper shell in the area of New Mexico 47. They said they saw it following Tara on the return leg of her trip. Witnesses even said the passenger was the 18-year-old son of an influential law enforcement officer. So it's curious here, very, very curious of the timeline. So if the original reports at the time fingered the same guy who's the son of the sheriff, that leads a lot of credence to these later stories. But let's continue here. In 2008, News Bulletin's article, Valencia Sheriff Rene Rivera said several witnesses had told him that the two young men in the truck had been following Tara, trying to talk to her while grabbing at her, and the truck hit the bicycle, knocking her to the ground. From there, the individuals took her, Rivera said. There have been other reports too. In November 2013, a police report was filed detailing a dying confession of a witness who had identified 3 men, including the officer's son, as being involved in Tara's disappearance. The bicycle was reportedly thrown in the Belen junkyard and Tara's body thrown into a pond by the young men. So if these are all different reports coming in at different times, some of them at the time of the disappearance, some of them decades later, and they're all naming the same guys with the same story, and this deathbed confession matches up with all that, I mean, for all intents and purposes, what does that mean? There had also been reports that Tara had been raped, stabbed to death, buried, and covered with slabs of concrete. I mean, that's a common one in almost every missing person's case. In another story, Tara had been placed inside a freezer. all heartbreaking and traumatic for Tara's parents to hear. Police have dug up possible grave sites around Balin and in Valencia County with no results. According to an Albuquerque Journal article, the son of the officer died at age 21 during 1991, the result of a suicide or playing a game of Russian roulette that went awry. However, the father of the young man told the Journal he believed his son was murdered. Okay, all right. This is really bizarre. So, what are the options here? This story is true, and Lawrence Romero Jr. and his buddies, or whoever he was with, acquaintances, drug business partners, whoever these individuals are, they hit her, they abducted her, they murdered her, and in 1991, either he committed suicide, either it was an honest game of Russian roulette, if you could call it that, or he was murdered and made it to look like a suicide or game of Russian roulette. And Senior, who possibly helped him cover up the abduction, rape, and murder of Tara Calico, is stating that he believes his son was murdered. Wow, what a mess. And of course, he could be murdered, because if he runs with these kinds of individuals, he's a criminal himself, a murderer himself. It's possible he was. So we have the gauntlet run here of possibilities, and it seems difficult to rule out any of them. Because also, if he had a crisis of conscience, I mean, this is only a couple years later. He's 21 years old, so he would have been Tara's age. This is really, really tragic across the board here. Polaroid picture found, June 15th, 1989. A Polaroid picture of an unidentified young woman and a little boy was found in the parking lot of a convenience store in Port St. Joe, Florida. In the picture, both victims were gagged with duct tape and bound with their arms behind their backs. The color photograph was in good condition, but both victims faced the camera and appeared to be in the back of a van in obvious distress. Police consulted with Polaroid, who told investigators the picture had been taken after May 1989 because the film had not been available before that date. And again, hopefully they did verify that. Also, I mean, it could be obviously a factor, depending, but that means they were being held for a certain period of time. The woman who found the photograph described the vehicle as a white Toyota cargo van without windows that had been parked in a spot before she pulled in at the store. Investigators reported the woman remembered the man driving as being in his 30s with a mustache. Port is a smaller community of only 10,000 people in 1989. Police set up roadblocks, but the man has never been identified. I'm assuming that means they never found the vehicle, because all of these articles are stating that this man was never identified. Does that mean they did stop a white van and nothing was in the back and it wasn't this guy driving it? So then, I don't know. In 1989, the photograph made national news and broadcast on the show A Current Affair. After it aired, friends who had seen the show called Patty and told her they thought the girl in the photo resembled Tara. Relatives of Michael Henley, 9, also saw the episode and thought the little boy in the photograph resembled Michael. The little boy had been missing since April 1988 from New Mexico as well. Tara's and Michael's parents met with detectives. Patty left the police department convinced the young woman in the photo was her daughter. She noticed a scar on the unidentified woman's leg was identical to an injury Tara had sustained in a car accident. In addition, a paperback book of V.C. Andrews' My Sweet Audrina was lying next to the woman and Tara's favorite author. Scotland Yard analyzed the photograph, concluded the woman was Tara, but a second analysis by the Los Alamos National Laboratory disagreed with Scotland Yard. The FBI's analysis of the photo was inconclusive. Michael Henley found. Michael Henley had gone missing while turkey hunting with his father in 1988, about 75 miles from where Tara was abducted. And again, regarding that distance of 75 miles, that is not a gigantic distance for possible transients or kidnappers who are driving around the country kidnapping people. Just an interesting point there. I mean, anything within the state that should be considered possibly not coincidental. His mother and father were convinced the Polaroid was of their son. However, that is now considered highly unlikely. His remains were eventually discovered in June 1990 in the Zuni Mountains, about 7 miles from where he vanished. Other photographs surfaced. 2 other photographs have surfaced over the years, and Tara's family has had to try to identify each one as if in a bad nightmare. And I already went over those. In 2009, okay, and we already went over the photographs with the boy and the marker over his mouth, which, I mean, that is really bizarre because these were postmarked from New Mexico. But this was in 2009, so this is now 2 decades later. Is someone just screwing around 2 decades later? I mean, this whole case is really bizarre. I don't know. So the article states that authorities in Port St. Joe believe the photograph of the young boy has something to do with Tara's abduction, but it remains a mystery. Supposedly, authorities in New Mexico do not believe the two are related. Interesting. Tara's family vows to find her. Tara's mother, Patty, and her father, John Dole, have since passed away. Before her death, Patty suffered several strokes and would stare out of her window in the Florida retirement home where she lived with Tara's father. She would wait each day for her daughter to ride by on her bicycle. I'm assuming this is Tara's stepfather the author is referring to. Even though they were living 2,000 miles from where Tara had vanished, Patty would look through her window and wondered if the women riding by were her daughter. I'd have to try to explain to her that it wasn't Tara, that this was a person too old or too young, John Dole told the Albuquerque Journal in 2006 when Patty had passed away. Patty was looking for Tara right to the end. With Patty's passing, it seemed like the end of the search for Tara. Patty and John had been forced behind the continued search for Tara, even becoming deputized so they could conduct their own searches and send out thousands of flyers throughout the country. Patty worked with the National Center for Missing Adults and appeared on several national television shows raising awareness of her daughter's disappearance. According to the Albuquerque Journal, in 2013, a 6-person task force of local and federal law enforcement officers was created to re-examine the case of the University of New Mexico sophomore. A year later, the task force dismantled. It would also be curious to know if it was confirmed, so it was rumored that Lawrence Romero Jr., the son of the sheriff, senior, knew Tara Calico. Did they go to school together, high school, college, or did they know each other through other means? And also sad that after a year, this task force was dismantled, unless they definitively found out what happened to her and they found the people responsible and they felt that they couldn't get a prosecution and all these people are dead. So, I mean, it's still bizarre because you would want some kind of official closure here. That is when Michelle Dole, Tara's younger sister, took up where her mother had left off, teaming up with Melinda Esquivel, who had known Tara as a member of the Balin High School marching band. They started a new journey together with a common goal: to find Tara. My mom had sent me an article from Valencia County News Bulletin in 2008 about how Tara had been missing for 20 years, and I just started crying. Melinda told Rosalie Rayburn of Albuquerque Journal. That happening had traumatized the community and kind of changed how we felt about safety in our community. We couldn't wrap our minds around what happened to her. Melinda lived in Los Angeles and worked in the entertainment industry and was intrigued by the case, keeping Tara's memory alive. During Christmas 2008, Melinda went home to Balin and had dinner with old friends where she brought up Tara's disappearance. She was jolted by the response. They said, "Oh, Melinda, the whole town knows who did it," Melinda told the Albuquerque Journal. Her friends were referring to the young boys who had been driving the truck and the son of the prominent law enforcement officer. At that moment, Melinda realized she had to do something to find Tara. Melinda began working on a documentary about Tara's disappearance and launched a podcast called Vanished, the Tara Calico Investigation, that has been downloaded over 1 million times. In addition, Melinda and Michelle also launched a website and Vanished, the Tara Calico story on Facebook that has nearly 7,000 followers. Melinda and Michelle are realistic. After so many years have passed, both women know officials are unlikely to further investigate the case without a body. However, they both set out to finish what Patty Dole started, to bring Tara home for a proper burial and to receive the justice she so deserves. The FBI announced a $20,000 reward in 2019 for specific information about the location of Tara. Okay, a couple more details that Henry Brown, the deathbed confession, his neighbor was Lawrence Romero Jr. I don't know why it's not stated in these other sources. So it's his neighbor's house. So if he's friendly with his neighbor, the son of the police chief, Lawrence Romero Jr., of the sheriff, the police sheriff, I guess if they have that kind of relationship where they just go into each other's basement all the time, I suppose he could have just wandered in not knowing the body was there, and then that's when everything hit the fan and they threatened him. And so basically Brown told the police that Lawrence Romero Jr. and several friends openly discussed killing Tara on the day she went missing. So is he alleging that this was the same exact day that he spoke to them? And they were openly discussing it, which is also, I mean, that's its own level of insanity. And for the people who think this is all dubious, these are all police records and they are public. You can download them from scribd.com, SCRIBD.com. New Mexico State Police Tara Calico. And here you can see the exact police reports. And they have here various documents, information on the gravesite, and all of these things. Okay, since this is MINDSHOCK, we have to go over all the details. And I actually don't remember this being featured in any documentaries or reports, but pieces of Tara's broken Walkman were found at the entrance to the John F. Kennedy campground, 20 miles away, northeast or so of where there were bike tracks where she veered off the road, where Tara's cassette tape, pieces of the Walkman, and oil slick tire tracks and beer cans were found. This is the location people believe that she was taken at, which is roughly a third of her way to the one-way stop. So she would go down 47 to the end of rail tracks and then turn back. So she was relatively close to home when where this spot was. It's about 4 to 6 miles from her house. And then we have miles northeast, there was also a spot found. There was also pieces of her specific Walkman found between Gallo Peak and Capilla Peak at this campground. So now here's an interesting thing. If whoever took her, if they're visiting campgrounds, is it that much more unlikely that they were in the Oso Ridge, Blue Water State Park, Zuni Park area, Zuni Reservation area, where Henley was taken? Does pieces of Tara Calico's Walkman being found at a campground increase the chances of Michael Henley being in that photograph? So, yeah, it's bizarre. Let's not fall for false dichotomies. Is it possible there was no intention to kill her? Is it possible that Lawrence Romero Jr. did in fact know Tara Calico? Did in fact want to run her off the road, possibly even assault and rape her? Is it possible that one of these associates, possibly the unnamed one, took over from there and she actually wasn't dead? And he just took her body, and then he went to this other campground and these other campgrounds and also kidnapped this boy. I'm just thinking outside the box, because how do we connect all these pieces? It's quite curious indeed. Here is a really, really detailed write-up on unresolved mysteries, a very interesting subreddit for true crime. This was posted by West Kendall Jenner 3 years ago. The Disappearance of Tara Calico. This is my first part in the series on the disappearance of Tara Calico. Like many of you, my introduction to this case was when I came across the infamous Polaroid several years ago. She has been discussed here several times, but I wanted to do a very comprehensive write-up of her disappearance, and there is so much I want to cover I can't do it in one post. Who was Tara Calico? Tara Lee Calico was born on February 28, 1969, to Patty and David Calico in Albuquerque, New Mexico. A gifted student, she began taking college classes at the University of New Mexico's Valencia campus in her senior year and majored in psychology. After graduation, she took a job at Balin's First National Bank, where she worked for 11 months before she quit in August 88 to attend school full time. Interesting point there, because she quit in August, less than a month. She's a month later, she's abducted. So here again, we have these timeline issues of irregularities. Now, irregularities aren't good. That is interesting. Her mom, Patty, was a longtime employee of the Santa Fe Railway, who started out as a clerk in Kansas City before moving up to an assistant train master for the BNSF Railroad in Balin. Now here's another issue with this. So the other Polaroid that is seemingly the goof Polaroid, like whatever, the prank, gag, whatever, that's taken place on a train, and the mother of a missing person who's alleged by some to be in this photograph, just another coincidence. And again, I'm not saying there are no such things as a coincidence. Every case usually has around one. Once you get two or more and go into dozens and dozens, like the Maura Murray case or the Stephen Avery case, you have to say something is afoot. You can't be that much of a brainless coincidence theorist. But in this case, for example, in that shot, you can't see the female's face very well, so that could very well be the coincidence in this case. Maybe it's the Walkman being found at the campground trailhead. I would assume they would have searched that area thoroughly, but again, if it is her in the photograph, what happened afterwards? They went to California after that? I don't know. This is tough to put all these pieces together, the anomalies, the coincidences. So back to this right up here, her mother separated from David in January 1975, and while working in the railway yards, met a fellow employee named John Dole. So he works for a railway company as well, who she quickly hit it off with. Like her, John was divorced in his early 30s, had 2 children from a previous marriage, and had worked at the railroad much of his adult life. Patty and John married in June 1975, and John quickly fell in love with feisty 6-year-old teeny Tara. By all accounts, Tara was a responsible, kind, organized, and independent teenager. The very independent child who began cooking her own breakfast before she was even big enough to reach the stove. She loved animals and had bought her stepdad a Rottweiler for his birthday 10 days before she disappeared. Her gut feeling about a male coworker led to her best friend getting married, and she herself was described as the type of girl you'd want to bring home to your mother. Tara was also highly athletic. She was the popular manager of her high school track team, enjoyed track and tennis, and took a long-distance bike ride almost every morning when weather permitted. It was on one of these bike rides that she would disappear, September 20th, 1988. And this Walkman was found on September 24th, 1988, at the entrance to the John F. Kennedy campground, a number of miles to the northeast. New Mexico State Road 47 is a 59.6-mile-long highway that passes through Bernalillo, Valencia, and Socorro counties before ending at the intersection with US 60. Tara would cycle along the lower half of 47, a mostly straight line southeast of Rio Communities, down to the railroad tracks near Diablo Road. That's ominous. Before turning back home. It was roughly a 36-mile ride through the lonely rural territory, with miles of desert and sagebrush on either side, with the occasional ranch dotting the roadside. Patty had ridden her bike on this route before, but stopped after one incident earlier in 1988 when she was frightened by a man following her in his car. She tried to get Tara to stop riding that route, or to at least start carrying mace with her, but Tara didn't feel the same danger her mother did and brushed it off. Okay, so that's a little bit better of an explanation. So her mom apparently, I guess, kept telling her it's too dangerous, don't go there, go somewhere else, and Tara simply didn't listen. She's 19 years old. Again, that doesn't seem that strange upon this explanation. Tara woke before 9 a.m. on the morning of September 20th, 1988. She laid out her tennis attire and school books on her bed. She had a match with her boyfriend at 12:30 p.m. and then class at 3:30 p.m. and asked Patty to come pick her up if she wasn't back by noon so she wouldn't be late. Because her own bike had a flat tire, she took Patty's bike, a neon pink 10-speed Huffy with yellow control cables and sidewalls, and left. All right, there we have our explanation. The first half of Tara's ride was perfectly normal. She biked 17 miles to the railroad tracks before heading back home to get ready for her tennis match. At 11:30 a.m., 2 ranch hands saw her biking north towards home. At 11:45 a.m., 3 men driving south on their way home from a hunting trip witnessed something unsettling. Tara pedaling along on her mom's pink Huffy while an older off-white pickup truck followed closely behind. She had her headphones on and appeared to be oblivious to the car behind her. Then another man driving south saw the same car still following an apparently unaware Tara at a spot 4.5 miles from Rio Communities. There appeared to be more than one man inside the vehicle. Inside the truck, the pickup truck. This was the last known sighting of Tara Calico alive. All right, so basically, these 3 men driving home from a hunting trip, they don't decide to investigate. They see a car driving dangerously close behind a female bicyclist, and they don't, at least, I don't know, not just them, but then another man saw the same scene. So that's 4 individuals who saw her at this approximate location at 11:45 a.m., shortly after 11:45 a.m. This is bizarre. I guess it depends on how closely they were behind her, because if they were just semi-close, I mean, we've probably all seen that scene where we thought it looked a little strange, but if they're right up on her, that, I don't know, what would people do? I mean, I guess most people didn't have cell phones at the time, but would you turn around and follow and make sure everything's okay? Would you call the police to have them check? If they had done any of those things, would this have not happened? At 12:05, Patty Dole set out to look for Tara. That is a doting mother. I mean, she's supposed to be back by 12. She only gives her 5 minutes before she leaves. That's a pretty good response right there. Most people would probably wait at least 10, 20 minutes, maybe even a half an hour, an hour. She drove the whole way down to the railroad tracks and then back up again twice, but couldn't find her. Thinking she might have had an accident, she called the local hospital, but was told that nobody matching her daughter's description had been admitted. She enlisted a few of Tara's friends to help her look later that afternoon, but when they too could find no sign of Tara or the bicycle, Patty called the Valencia County Sheriff's Office. Lawrence Romero, who had been the sheriff since 1976, immediately suspected foul play. Quote, "We feel this is an involuntary disappearance," end quote. "We understand from talking to her parents and friends that this is totally out of character for her to turn up missing," end quote. Okay, what are the chances here? If his son is responsible for her disappearance, possible rape, possible murder, what does this say? That the sheriff, at this time, if he doesn't know that his son is responsible, or maybe he does and he's putting up this front, what are the chances when in all these other cases where it's obvious that foul play should be suspected, and then sheriffs just write it off? Oh, she's probably, the missing person's probably at a friend's house, or they ran away. No reason to suspect foul play. But in this case, what are the chances that if his son is responsible, the sheriff is saying this? Yeah, this is definitely a unique case. The next day, on the west side of the highway, just 4 miles from Rio Communities, police found a set of bike tracks that veered off the side of the road So, according to this, it was the next day, not the day of her disappearance. Police found a set of bike tracks that veered off the side of the road into a soft shoulder and led to a spot 100 yards away. 100 yards from the road? Where they discovered some tire tracks and fresh oil slick. A brief trail of footprints led to a spot where they found something even more ominous. Tara's Boston cassette tape and the front plastic window of her Walkman. So it was just the front plastic window. The rest of her broken Walkman was found 20 miles away on September 24th near the entrance of the remote John F. Kennedy campground at the foot of the Manzano Mountains. More than 300 land and air searchers scoured the mountains and the river Bosque over the weekend, but nothing else was found and the effort was scaled back on the 27th. I mean, these sound like extensive searches. Does that mean she was in a camper van and she got taken away? Or in another vehicle and she was taken away from that area? Or if this was Lawrence Romero Jr. and his buddies, or other individuals, possibly known to them, possibly not, if they had taken her to a basement or dumped her in a pond or whatever, did they just want to dump the Walkman there to get everybody looking in the wrong direction away from town if she was buried somewhere in town? And this is all quite tragic because if this is 100 yards from the road, so if they bumped her with the truck or scared her in some kind of way, if they were grabbing at her on the road. See, other witnesses said they were grabbing. In this article, in this write-up, it doesn't specifically say that, just following close behind. In other articles, apparently there were, I think, 7 individuals who spotted her. Not sure if they also spotted the truck, though. So other individuals might have simply seen her riding back towards home. So, I mean, it's all quite tragic because Lawrence Romero Jr. also lives relatively close to her. So this isn't a case of her biking all the way out to Diablo Road, something happening out there where no one sees anything. She's actually getting relatively close to home, and there's plenty of witnesses that see this incident with the truck. It's a shame they couldn't remember the license plates or part of the license plate of this truck to be tracked down, because that would be the smoking gun, I would believe. Because what are the chances that this kind of situation can happen and then someone else kidnapped her and not the men in this vehicle? So if they ran her off the road and then there's footprints, she's trying to run away, and then they grab her, it's haunting to even think about that. Meanwhile, detectives were following up on other leads and interviewing people up and down 47 who might have seen Tara on her bike. They turned up 7 witnesses who saw her, 5 of whom also saw the suspicious pickup. At least 4 of these witnesses underwent hypnosis to mixed results. So they couldn't get the plate. They also ruled out any connection to the case of Deborah Lansdale, a 29-year-old nurse who had disappeared from Valen under suspicious circumstances on September 21st, 1985. So that's a couple of years earlier. A bike water bottle found discarded in someone's yard was initially thought to be Tara's, but later turned out not to be hers. A disturbed patch of earth by the side of New Mexico 47 was dug up but yielded nothing, and so did a field that was excavated after a woman called to say she heard digging there the day after Tara vanished. So they sound like they're being relatively thorough. They're digging up all these areas and everything. Detectives also questioned 3 men who they found sitting in the back of their pickup drinking beer, but the beer didn't match the cans found at the scene where Tara's cassette tape was found. These men were drinking Bud, not Old Milwaukee. On October 25th, Sheriff Romero announced that they believed at least 2 men were involved in Tara's abduction. Based on the witness who came forward to say he saw 2 people in the pickup at 11:45 a.m. The suspect driver was a 35 to 45-year-old white male with reddish-brown hair. Is this one of the guys described by the Deathbed confessor, who was between 5'9" and 6 foot and weighed 190 to 210 and had blue or hazel eyes with deep wrinkles between his eyes and by his temples? The car was white or off-white, mid-50s to early 60s Ford pickup with a camper shell. Chrome wheels, oversized tires, and a Ford emblem with crushed red glass letters. It bore New Mexico plates that began with WBY or WBZ and ended with the number 6. The sketch generated over 100 phone tapes and 4 interviews, but no arrests. I cannot believe they could not track this vehicle down. They got a partial plate either. I mean, if this is brought up through unreliable hypnosis, it doesn't state here. I mean, we have a sketch. The sketch is fairly generic. The only thing you could tell is that there are pronounced wrinkles around the eyes. But if this partial plate is accurate, if they have the beginning and end of the plate, if that's accurate, and again, if they're saying it's 6, I guess if it was far away, I mean, it possibly maybe could have been 5. What else looks like 6? Maybe even 8. They could have obviously, mixed and matched because this is an off-white truck. They know it's mid-50s to early 60s with a camper shell. Not every pickup truck has a camper shell. So you would think that people could possibly have remembered seeing this in the area because is this vehicle just passing through? Or is it someone that's local? If it was local, you would think they would have been able to find it. So there were over 100 phone tips and there were 4 interviews. So does that mean that someone resembling the sketch was interviewed? But again, it's fairly generic sketch. The photograph, we already discussed that. I won't get into that. And Michael Henley disappeared 5 months before Tara. So not immediately before. 1989 onwards, in 1991, Patty and John Dole became authorized deputies in order to do their own search for Tara, pursuing leads on their own and using the sheriff's office copy machine to print out over 80,000 flyers. You know what else is really sad? They're working very, very closely with Sheriff Romero. Did Sheriff Romero help his son cover this up, or did Sheriff Romero not even know his son was responsible for whatever period of time? I mean, yeah, this is right out of a movie. It's really weird to think about that. They had been critical of the police investigation in the case almost since the beginning. For example, they said that 3 potential suspects killed themselves before police got to them and had wanted to do their own search. This is 1991. Wow. Is it possible they didn't kill themselves? And this was Sheriff Romero going around making sure this cover-up stuck? Because if his son was either suicided or killed, or actually committed suicide in 1991, did he just tie up all the loose ends? Because what if he unwittingly was forced to help somehow? If he overheard them talking or something of that nature and he didn't really want to, but on the other hand, maybe because of ego, he didn't want to be known as the sheriff whose son had done this while he was investigating under his nose, basically. I mean, how would you react if you're in that situation? It's easy to talk about it from the sidelines, but if you really try to put yourselves mentally in these individuals' shoes, it's very difficult. How many sheriffs would have their ego get the best of them and cover something up like this instead of being known as the father of the murderer if you're the sheriff? It's just really bizarre to think about. If that's true, of course, this is MINDSHOCK, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure, and I'm not alleging anything is true or untrue. I'm just going over information reported here. Contract investigator Jay Eschenberg of the District Attorney's Office told the Albuquerque Journal in November 1996 that Tara's abduction was a violent crime, a crime of opportunity, that led to her being raped and murdered. Detectives had always assumed that she was kidnapped by more than one person due to her physical fitness, and Eschenberg identified a trio of suspects that he strongly believed worked together. It is unclear if his 3 suspects belonged to the group of 4 boys mentioned further down. The case went mostly dormant until September 2008, when the then sheriff Rene Rivera announced to the public that he knew what had happened to Tara Calico 19 years earlier. According to him, 4 boys who knew Tara accidentally hit her with their pickup truck while she was biking along 47, threw her and the bicycle in the back of their truck, and took her to a gravel pit. When she threatened to make sure they all went to jail, they killed her and disposed of the bicycle in an undisclosed junkyard. Okay, so just a quick point here. If there was no rape, If she knew these, if she was acquainted with the boys, and what did she think they were trying to do? They were going to dispose her of the bicycle. If she knew them and was fairly, I guess she would have to know them fairly well to threaten to go to the police without fearing that they would kill her. I'm not sure there. Maybe they just, I don't know what they were saying this whole time, because I don't know. That's tough to think about also. It was sort of an open secret that they had murdered Tara, and their parents aided in the cover-up, but without Tara's body, Sheriff Rivera said he couldn't press charges against anyone. This angered John, who questioned why he would publicly say this if he wasn't going to arrest anyone with the circumstantial evidence he had said. So how many of the overlap between these suspects are these other suspects that committed suicide, and possibly another different trio by Jay Eschenberg of the DA's office? So he had a trio of his suspects in mind, and then there was this other group, which may or may not also be part of a group that committed suicide early on in 91, by 91. Yeah, this is not a simple case. The photograph bounced back into the news summer 2009 when Police Chief David Barnes of Port St. Joe received two strange photos of a sandy-haired young boy, one an original photo of the child and another with a black marker scribbled over his mouth to resemble tape. The first was postmarked June 2nd, the second August 10th. 2 months apart. Both were mailed from Albuquerque with no accompanying note or return address. August 12th, 2 days later from the second one, Port St. Joe Star received another letter showing the same boy with black marker scribbled over his mouth. The boy in these pictures has never been identified, and it is unknown whether it's the same child as the one in the Polaroid found in June 1989. So in 1989, okay, no widespread use of internet, at least not comparable to anything in 2009. 2009, widespread use of internet among all law enforcement agencies, civilians, everyone, and they can't identify this kid. That's kind of weird. That is kind of weird. The latest news in Tara's case came in 2013 when a task force consisting of 6 local and federal agents reopened the investigation. A documentary produced by Melinda Esquivel and R.J. Mitt of Breaking Bad fame is supposedly in the works, but the project appears to be in limbo and there hasn't been an update in 7 months. In November 2002, Tara's biological father, David, was walking home from a bar in Albuquerque when he was mugged by 2 men who stole his wallet, 2 rings, and his heart medication. He went home, went to bed, and died of a major heart attack in his sleep. Patty and John moved to Port Charlotte, Florida in September 2003, and Patty soon began suffering from a series of strokes, which she passed away from on May 11, 2006. Tara is listed as a survivor in her obituary. John Dole is still alive today. This was 3 years ago. So just jump across to another theory that I haven't seen mentioned before. This is on culturecrossfire.com. Unsolved Mysteries and Scary Stuff. Tara, Calico, Michael Henley, and Joan Gay Croft by Andrew Lutsky. June 25th, 2015. Sheriff Rene Rivera stared at the small array of reporters in front of him. He knew that their public outreach was perhaps the last chance to solve a cold case. He needed a whistleblower. He believed that somewhere in the Arizona desert there was a young woman's body, by now nothing more than bones. However, this skeleton contains vital DNA that may hold clues as to what happened to Tara Calico. The article mentions a few more details about the Henley case. Henley was a 9-year-old boy who went on a camping trip to the Zuni Mountains with his father and a family friend. April 89, within 20 minutes of arriving, Henley had disappeared, and the search for him by family and the police turned up nothing. And then the article goes on to go over the photos that we already went over. For the next 20 years, the case lay cold. Sheriff Rene Rivera, in charge of the county where Calico disappeared, came in front of the press and revealed that the investigation of the past revealed that two teenagers were riding in the pickup truck in question when they saw Calico riding along the highway. Does that mean they did find the truck? How could they have the teenagers and not the truck if they had the plate and the exact type of truck? They began to mess with Calico, and in the process, the truck accidentally hit Tara's bike. She made threats to call local law and report the teen's behavior, which prompted them to abduct Calico, murder her, and hide her body in the vast nothingness of Arizona. That actually makes more sense along these lines. If they're riding next to her and tugging at her, pushing at her, if she knows them, nothing bad has really happened there. Nothing super bad. They're just kind of being super annoying and obviously endangering her, but nothing, this isn't a rape or murder at this point. It's some kind of an assault, and she's threatening to go to the police with this kind of behavior because they're grabbing at her while driving next to her and she's riding her bike. It's super dangerous. And at this point, they make the decision because they don't want to get in trouble for that, and then it spirals out of control. That makes a little bit more sense than her bringing that up after they already rape her or hit her and run her off the road. Without her body, Sheriff Rivera wasn't comfortable making an arrest. Two other teens are suspected of participating in the cover-up of the crime. So apparently these are not the individuals that committed suicide then, because this is in 2009. Now here's a 2016 update with information I haven't seen. Police records now indicate that a few boys, including an ex-boyfriend of Calico's, plotted out her kidnapping, rape, and murder. No arrests have ever been made. A documentary crew who is in the process of funding a film on this case went to Arizona and reported that some in the town where Calico disappeared from were definitely hiding something. So how many groups of suspects are there, and how many of them committed suicide? So the ones that committed suicide, they didn't do it, or were they acquainted with the ones that did it? Are these overlapping groups of people is the question now. Witnesses who may have info on the teen's disappearance have been threatened and harassed by persons unknown, and it seems the perpetrators plan on making sure Calico's case remains cold. Tara's biological parents have since passed away. Her stepfather still lives in Florida and has publicly stated that Sheriff Rivera should have remained silent if he wasn't planning on making any arrests. The true identities of the children in the infamous photo remain unresolved to this day. Interesting. So someone is naming Tara Calico's ex-boyfriend as part of this plot? Apparently this was a plotted out kidnapping, rape, and murder, according to this update here. And then, of course, we can't dismiss the individual that apparently was made her mother feel uncomfortable and stop biking with her. Who was that individual? And is it just coincidental? Is that situation another coincidence there? So the story with Lawrence Romero Jr.'s death is also weird. So this is the son of then Sheriff Lawrence Romero. According to this West Kendall Jenner guy that wrote this write-up on Reddit that we started earlier, he ostensibly died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, possibly while playing Russian roulette. His friend says he went to the bathroom and was in there only a few minutes when he heard the shot, ran out to see what was wrong, and found Junior lying dead on the floor. However, Sheriff Romero believed his son was murdered and accused Valencia County PD of doing a shoddy investigation. So the sheriff is criticizing the county PD. There's a whole list of things pointing to the friend's guilt, including a neighbor who heard them arguing less than an hour before the shot was fired, a whiskey bottle found in the bathroom sink that he could not explain, and the bullet trajectory being inconsistent with a normal self-inflicted wound. The suspect was tried in court for evidence tampering, a fourth-degree felony in New Mexico, in relation to the case, but was acquitted. The thing that's weird, though, who goes to the bathroom to randomly play Russian roulette? Is that some kind of a weird tick, where every time you go to the bathroom, you leave a handgun there and you just pull the trigger, and then you spin and pull the trigger as often as going to the bathroom if you have a death wish or something? That doesn't make a lot of sense at all. Okay, here's another Reddit post which actually predates the other one. This is 4 years ago, posted by Coriolis. Tara Calico, about as resolved as it can get. Also from Unresolved Mysteries. I wanted to make a write-up on the case so I can have something to link to every time someone mentions the Polaroid. Tara Calico is known by most people as a possible match for a tied-up girl in a Polaroid left in a parking lot in the 80s. She went missing on September 20th, 1988, last seen taking a bike ride along a state road. Pieces of her Walkman and a cassette tape were found on her usual route. And also, so it was just the glass that was found near the road, and then the rest of it was found at the campground, 20 miles away, 20 miles northeast. What most people overlook are the case documents in the public record. I'm attempting to summarize them here and separate the wheat from the chaff, since it's a lot of content, and this person said this thing in an interview. Dying man Henry Brown requested an interview with Deputy Frank Methola that is detailed in the case docs, date not included, but I assume it had been many years after her disappearance. Brown stated that he hung out with some troublemaking teens. One of them, Lawrence Romero Jr., son of the sheriff Lawrence Romero Sr. Jr. dealt drugs and was also interested in Tara, but she was dating another guy, Jeff Abeda, who also happened to sell drugs. So these are druggies and neighbors, and wow, if this is true. Brown was partying with Junior and his buddies at Junior's trailer, specifically the makeshift basement under it. So this isn't a real basement, it's a makeshift basement trailer. Part of the party talk included Junior and his friends talking about how they hit Tara with their truck, then raped and killed her. They hid her body in the bushes, and when the search intensified, moved her under a tarp in the makeshift basement and then later to a pond. A man named Donald Dutcher also came forward in late 2013 to say one of the suspects confessed to him. The problem with this investigation, well, first off, one of the prime suspects was the son of the sheriff. Second of all, speculation that Deputy Sheriff, later Sheriff Rene Rivera, was a dirty cop who had their backs. But then why would he come out with information later then? Thirdly, all of the suspects are now deceased. Junior either committed suicide or played a game of Russian roulette, depending on who you asked, in 91, and supposedly left a note confessing, which was not entered into evidence by Deputy Rivera. The docs are vague on who the other suspects are, so I'm not going to name the names, although there are plenty. So again, it's unclear which sheriff covered this all up. Because wouldn't it be more likely that Senior disposed of the note and covered it all up? Or maybe a combination of both. Maybe Rivera gave Senior the note, then it goes missing, Rivera doesn't ask any questions, but years later, he wants to make it public. None of this really makes any sense. I mean, can't they do some kind of radar tests for skeletal remains, or is that too difficult to do? They'd have to drain all these ponds, but how many ponds could there possibly be in that specific area? And people chiming in here on these theories are stating that there really are not that many ponds around that area. Other people also bring up sonar equipment, which can show the bottom of ponds quite accurately. Also, some people believe that the bike went in the pond with the body, in which case would the bike be easier to spot with sonar? Other people also keep discussing the Polaroids. Some parents actually said they couldn't even notice their own kids depending on certain photographs. So it's, there's obviously a wide range on the spectrum of how easy it would be. A few other commentaries also list here that Patty believed that the clues were left behind by Tara in an attempt to mark her trail regarding the Walkman that was recovered near the John F. Kennedy campgrounds. Interesting. I didn't see that tidbit before. Other theories, of course, that she was sex trafficked, and of course Florida is a hub. So if they're going back and forth to Florida, is it possible they're going back and forth then to California again? It's just curious how these Polaroids were found. So a couple more details about Donald Dutcher. This was posted by the Gemini Tiger on imgur.com. Donald Dutcher had a presence among Tara Calico's class in high school, particularly among the group of boys suspected in her disappearance. Back in the day, 28 years ago, he'd park his car at his friend's laundromat and eventually attract a crowd of neighborhood kids. That's how he became acquainted with a number of the locals and learned a little bit about everyone. Tara Calico was described by witnesses as an intelligent, athletic, and attractive young girl throughout high school. Donald elaborated she wasn't the party type. She was more interested in staying focused on schoolwork and her various responsibilities. John Dole, her stepfather, said she had always been focused and self-sufficient as a child. Dutcher knew one of the boys suspected of being in the truck. Charles Houghton was a known drug dealer, a known drug user among his friends and locals of Balin. Throughout high school, he was constantly skipping school and smoking weed with his friends. His drug addiction eventually led to heroin later in adulthood. Houghton confessed to Dutcher, claiming he couldn't live with the guilt. Unfortunately, it was around the time that Dutcher spent some time in jail in another state and was unable to forward this information. As if you can't forward the information through... I mean, what do you mean he can't forward the information? That's weird. Agents from the task force questioned him on other people that may have been suspects, and from what I was able to verify, it seems Donald's memory of the events and the information seemed reliable. Of all the witnesses interviewed, I was the most impressed by his statement. Dutcher mentioned another boy who seemed to be the main person of interest, Lawrence Romero Jr., but didn't quite know him as well as Houghton. And these interviews were recorded on video with a video camera, according to these case file documents, which are public. Bizarre. Henry Brown, an older gentleman at the time, lived up the street from Romero. He was associated with the boys and the overall scene in a number of ways. One being he was a worker at the high school they attended, and he also relied on Romero for his drug fix. So it looks like these are all a circle of drug users and drug dealers. According to Brown, Romero lived in a trailer on his father's rental property. He had built a makeshift basement under his trailer, and that's where he partied with his friends and sold drugs. So Romero, the son of the sheriff, is a drug dealer. Sometimes, after Calico had disappeared, Brown went to visit Romero, who was partying with friends, and saw a grave wrapped in a blue tarp in the basement. So he's not seeing specifically a body necessarily. He's seeing a grave wrapped in a blue tarp, possibly in the shape of a body of a young woman. That's when Romero and his friends began to open up about the case. And I guess if they were high on drugs, whatever, they might just say whatever, right? If they were completely sober, maybe they wouldn't, but I don't know. Again, these are all variables we have to keep in mind. Allegedly, Romero was driving an older model truck at the time, the 1950s F-100, as seen by witnesses. What? So why is this allegedly? So nobody in town knows what he's riding? How can this not be nailed down? I don't understand why this is so vague. Apparently, everyone knew that Calico rode her bike through town and down the highway and major streets. It was easy for them to track her down. That's an interesting point, because if these are friends with an ex-boyfriend or whatever, and they're friends with friends, and people see her while they're driving, whatever, so it's known that she rides her bike almost every morning on that stretch. So this could be a targeted attack here. It doesn't have to be a crime of opportunity. Romero then hit her with the truck and threw her in the bed along with the bike. The discussions became graphic when one of the boys claimed to have raped her inside the camper. Brown then claimed the boys took her out to the gravel pits where they continued to rape and sodomize her in seclusion. She got ballsy, Romero said among his friends, describing a moment when Calico stood up to defend herself and threatened to have them thrown in jail. That's when a couple of boys held her down and Romero stabbed her to death, and they discarded the body in the nearby bushes. The motivation behind all of this was believed to be a malicious and violent act of jealousy. There may have been some kind of violent feud between Romero's gang and Calico boyfriend at the time, Jeff Abeda. Okay, here's a couple points here. I suppose it's possible they could have accidentally hit her. If they were drunk or high, maybe they noticed her, they knew it was her, they just wanted to screw around and they accidentally hit her and killed her there. And they just told this tall tale about her threatening to go to the cops and all the rapes. I mean, any combination of this could be true, because we don't know, of course. We're not going to take the word of drug dealers and criminals as gospel. Maybe they did rape and murder her, but she didn't get ballsy as he alleged. They were just making up stories, and part of it was true, but not all of it. Curious. When the search began, they got nervous and moved the body beneath the trailer, and that's when Brown saw it. The boys, so he saw them moving the body under the trailer? The boys threatened his life. If you ever say anything, we'll come for you next. Brown has only come forward with this information now due to failing health, and he wanted to pass it on before he died. But if all of these guys are dead already, why? I mean, shouldn't he have had come forward in 1991 when Romero, or is he afraid of friends or friends of friends that aren't dead? Tara's body was moved again to its final resting place, supposedly buried somewhere inside Valencia County somewhere. The bike was said to be discarded at a junkyard. It's theorized that Romero was never brought to justice because his father, Lawrence Romero Sr., was the chief of police at the time. Several of the witnesses believed that there was a cover-up. Brown had choice words for Sheriff Rene Rivera, who was a deputy in '88, that he believed helped cover up Calico's murder. Your sheriff there is not innocent. Months after making his statement to the police, Brown passed away. So he's alleging that Rene Rivera helped Romero Sr. covered this up. A surprising amount of deaths and misfortunes seemed to plague the group of people involved with her disappearance. Of the 4 boys suspected of her abduction and murder, only one is believed to be alive today. One of the unnamed suspects, in some poetic justice, was supposedly hit by a truck and died. I was not able to verify his death, but I've read this from multiple witness reports. Former Sheriff and Commissioner Lawrence Romero Sr., considered by witnesses to play an influential role in the cover-up of Calico's murder, suffered the loss of 2 children since then. Romero Jr. was cited by various witnesses and was believed to be the boy that struck Tara with a vehicle, abducted and murdered her, then buried the body somewhere in Valencia County. To get an idea of what a lunatic he was, I was able to verify that in 1991 he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound playing an actual game of Russian roulette. Romero Sr. then lost a daughter in 2013. And again, this story about the Russian roulette, that sounds a little bit far-fetched. Perhaps one of his drug associates wanted to take him out, and if they were arguing shortly before, and they were drunken and or high, again, this is not an uncommon situation among drug users and dealers. Charles Houghton made a chilling confession to Donald Dutcher, saying that he was constantly haunted by her voice. According to Dutcher, Houghton took the easy way out. I wasn't able to uncover any details about his apparent suicide, but I believe it was drug-related. Houghton's death was indeed verified by an obituary from 2008. As for Sheriff Rene Rivera, he ended up losing his position as chief in 2010. and has long been criticized by locals for being corrupt and perpetuating the crime that's plagued Balin. A simple Google search will reveal a rabbit hole of complaints and discussion related to Rivera. Mystery still surrounds the case. The task force ended their investigation in 2014 and won't be reopening it unless a confession is made or a body is discovered. Tara is still missing. It's quite curious, though, because early on, what was it, in 91, supposedly there were 3 suspects that committed suicide at that point. Now, according to this article, there's other individuals involved, some of which hadn't died until 2008, another one of which was struck by a truck and died. So how many individuals exactly were involved? Or were these just people who told other people? And this was all considered an open secret in town? And how can they not verify what kind of truck the sheriff's son was driving? Or is this a second or third vehicle? If he has another main vehicle, that might make more sense, and then they drove it there and just simply switched the plate at a junkyard or something. I don't know. This is highly bizarre. A couple more little details here. There were rumors that she had been getting threats, that Tara Calico was getting threats, and also that Jeff Abeda was a drug dealer, possibly running in a drug dealing gang in conflict or competition with Romero Jr.'s. And some of these individuals could have been involved in this plot. And there was actually a People magazine article, late August 2017. The article came out June 2018, where in this article it says, witnesses said Calico was followed that morning by a pickup truck, and investigators learned that in the months before she went missing, threatening notes were left on her vehicle. Interesting. And people were also possibly stalking her mother, which is why she stopped biking. Why is this not known early? This is really bizarre. I don't know. This is really bizarre. So apparently she had broken up with this. Is Abeda her ex-boyfriend or her current boyfriend at this time? This is all very, very bizarre. I knew my parents knew immediately that some foul play had happened, says Chris Calico, Tara's older brother, 52. We didn't have any idea what. I knew nearly 3 decades later, they may finally learn the truth. Tara's case has seen a flurry of activity in recent years. A multi-agency task force examined it in 2013 and 2014, a key burst of momentum, and both the FBI and Valencia County Sheriff's Office are probing at least 2 living local suspects. So how many people were involved if all these other people died or committed suicide, and now there's still 2 living local suspects? Though they declined to discuss their probable theories or the suspects' names. Also, the car wreck she got into was in high school, so it doesn't state the year, but does that car wreck have something to do with the ex-boyfriend or some of these other individuals? What is going on? I don't know if there were more details ever revealed on what the circumstances of that car wreck were either. Law enforcement sources tell people that Tara may have been taken by someone whom she knew. It's a possibility endorsed by Sergeant Rowland and former Valencia County Sheriff Rene Rivera, who worked as the case's lead investigator for a decade, starting in '96 and left office in 2011. Citing 2 informants, Rivera thinks Tara could have been killed by at least 2 teenage boys from the community who acted with 2 accomplices. He tells people one theory was that she was attacked by boys riding together in a pickup truck that crossed her path on her bike ride that fateful September day. As Sheriff Rivera has said, the boys' families then helped them cover up their crime. He still believes Tara is likely buried somewhere in the county. Current investigators are skeptical of a conspiracy, so criminals can only act alone. Although both Rivera and Ron Lopez, a retired chief deputy district attorney long involved in the case, acknowledge previous complications, such as information that seemed to leak from within the sheriff's office. So there's all these complications and yet no conspiracy. And it just goes on to highlight Melinda Esquivel and her podcast documentary. But that's curious. So 4 main perpetrators and then family members and or other friends and gang members might have also known about it? Or drug dealers? Huh. Another article here is on TaraCalico.com. Balen, New Mexico is one of New Mexico's greatest mysteries. A young woman from a small, typically seen as safe town vanished without a trace. Rumors and so many questions have been circling for the last 29 years. Now there is renewed hope that answers may also finally be found regarding the disappearance of Tara Calico. This isn't just an urban legend, just a story out there or a photograph or something people heard about or warned kids about. Michelle, Tara's sister, said, "This was a person and she deserves it." Her sister Michelle is not ready to stop looking, and after years of disappointment, she is now taking matters in her own hands with the help of a friend. Melinda Esquivel didn't have many friends until she bonded with Tara on a band trip in high school. She said, "Nope, you were hanging out with us and took me and hugged me, and that is how we became friends," Esquivel said. After Tara's disappearance, Esquivel moved on with life. Then after one Christmas dinner with friends, Tara came up again. The response I got from those at the table who were my classmates were, "Oh, Melinda, the whole town knows who did it." It was after that conversation the Justice for Tara Calico mission began. Melinda Esquivel, who is a filmmaker, decided to create a documentary, but when she saw the case file at the sheriff's office, the mission took a new turn. They were in shambles. There were files with people's names on it, and there was nothing in there, Esquivel said. That's weird. So everything was removed? That doesn't seem sketchy at all. It was like, okay, now what? What do we do now? So we started investigating. The investigation took them to places they didn't expect. According to Esquivel, people did not want to talk about what happened, and says through the course of her investigation, her life and her family's lives have been threatened. Wow. That's quite mind-shocking in a case where supposedly all these suspects are dead. However, she says progress in the investigation has been made. According to Esquivel, different areas that were overlooked before are now being searched, unearthing secrets that have been hidden for years. She also believes that there are too many powerful people involved who do not want the case to be solved. People have passed who have strong ties to the community who may have deflected people coming forward from talking and getting involved. I think that has made a difference, Esquivel said. Michelle and Melinda have shared all the information they've gathered with investigators at the Valencia County Sheriff's Department, who remain the lead agency on the case. The two are also releasing what they've learned through a podcast that is now being shared around the country. Hollywood stars and many others are joining the fight Justice for Tara, despite the picture many believed could have been Tara found in a parking lot in Port St. Joe, Florida, months after her disappearance. Michelle and Melinda believe the story goes no further than Valencia County. Much of the information covered cannot be released to the public because the FBI and the Sheriff's Department are still building a case. A new detective was recently appointed to the case. So that's interesting. There were also supposedly, I don't know if they mentioned this on the podcast or this was elsewhere, that Romero Jr.'s van was spotted in Port St. Joe at approximately that year. I don't know what that means. Would that be too coincidental or near Port St. Joe? However, Michelle and Melinda do not believe that the story ever leaves Valencia County, this whole situation. So all quite bizarre, with so many mind shocks. But it's curious because at the time, for people just reading the case in passing, like they do nowadays for a lot of cases. I covered quite a bit of cases, and there are always coincidence theorists and authority-worshipping cultists who never think that police could ever be involved in any kind of cover-up. So they don't even entertain these notions that they consider outlandish conspiracy theories. But in a certain amount of cases, this is actually what happens, and that's why the case remains unsolved. So it's very curious why so many coincidence theorists out there refuse to acknowledge the possibility. They think invoking Occam's razor, which they invoke completely incorrectly, somehow disqualifies conspiracies or law enforcement cover-ups from being possible. Obviously, they're possible. Obviously, they happen in a certain percentage of cases, and obviously knowing which case it is very difficult without having enough evidence. But of course, quite silly and disrespectful to victims to not even examine all possible avenues, because these are why some of these cases remain unsolved. And possibly, and in terms of family members of the perpetrator, so if the perpetrators are all dead, suicide, murder, drug overdose, hit by truck, whatever, their family members, particularly if they're, I guess, powerful people in the community, maybe tied to politicians in the area or just really rich people, perhaps they don't want their family members' names dragged through the mud, so they'd rather the whole thing be forgotten. But it's kind of brazen to be threatening documentary filmmakers' lives. If that's true, that's brazen. The audacity. I mean, it's rough. But hopefully, if the FBI supposedly is now involved in the case, so that does look good. That does look good, so hopefully there will be justice served soon, if at nothing else, just closure. But the people that threatened others from coming forward, they should also be held accountable as well. Tampering or interfering with an investigation, intimidation, all these things. So, I hope you guys found another edition of MINDSHOCK True Crime informative and interesting. If you did and you want to support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. You can also just go to youtube.com/MINDSHOCK to manually check for updates and peruse our ever-expanding back catalog. If you want to keep awareness up in this case, hit that like button, share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patreon is to get a priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals of any kind, leave them in the comments section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.